Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Israeli-born Boston jazz drummer Dor Herskovits. He opened up about his new 2019 CD called Flying Elephants. It will be out on September 20th, 2019, and it is full of expressions, love, humor, and creativity. These days, he is a staple of that Boston jazz scene and has won international acclaim as an improviser. His original music draws from jazz and blues roots, folk and world music, free jazz, rock, and even metal. These days, he performs and records as a sideman and even a bandleader all around the United States and the world. So please get to know Dor and dig this interview, my friends.
So right up front, I want to thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure.
I want to talk about Flying Elephants. I've had a good chance to take a listen to this album. And there's a lot of levels of this album that feel, almost avant. There's a lot of, kind of free flow going on. Give me an idea of what your artistic vision for this project was.
I guess my taste is pretty eclectic. It's got everything in it that I enjoyed listening to, which is, started out from rock and roll, metal, prog rock, to continue to jazz, and then later on more free music, avant-garde, things like that, like you mentioned. I think that the compositions were mostly dictated by the band that I wanted to have for the record. I mean, I had sort of a vision for the music, but the band determined, the musicians that I work with determined what kind of music I thought would work best, to bring into that specific session. And basically, it's a mixture of everything that I mentioned. But it is a little avant-garde for sure. I do enjoy a little bit of free music and kind of taking it to a place where the improvisers can really go wild. It's not really boxed in any way.
Let's get back to the beginnings of your life. You were born in Israel, and I want to know how you got involved, not only with playing an instrument, but how did you get into jazz?
Well, I feel like I always wanted to play drums, specifically. As long as I remember myself, I always wanted it. It was hard to get into it, because no one wants their kid to play drums. It's a loud instrument. But when I was 13, I convinced my parents to get me drum lessons. I still didn't get a set, but I practiced at my teacher's place. And it was a sort of like open studio. You can go and practice there. And I kind of showed them after almost a year that I was serious about it. And so they said, okay, we'll get you a drum set. And I kind of, started out playing music. And that's what I did until now, basically. I didn't do it very seriously until my mid-20s. In Israel, there's a mandatory army service and all that, and I did that for a few years, and only afterwards I decided to really take music professionally. Jazz was something that, since around high school, was kind of an interesting thing to me. I would go to record stores when they still existed, and just ask them, what's the new cool thing to listen to, and I was looking at kind of fusion and things like that. I would I knew like Dave Weckl and all kinds of stuff like that, and I would listen to a lot of prog rock like King Crimson and Yes. Mm-hmm. But then one time I went into the record shop and I got this album that they recommended, Pat Metheny Trio, 99-2000. I don't know if you know the record. Yeah, so that's with Bill Stewart and Larry Grenadier, and that's the album that changed everything for me. I mean, I heard some Coltrane before, and I heard Duke Ellington and things like that from records that I had around that people gave me as presents. But that was just like from the very first drum intro, which is what starts the album. I was just hooked, and I couldn't stop listening to that album for probably a year, and then later on for many more years. But that was just like, it blew my mind, and it totally got me into this rabbit hole of what is jazz and how they made those amazing conversations with each other, and the sound that they had, and the improvisation aspect of it was really so interesting to me that I just got into it. And later on, I learned where they got it from. I went to the roots and delved into everything that was before that, from the 60s, 50s, and even before the beginning of the century. That's really what got me to come to the States as well, just looking for the source of this music.
speaking of, you make it to the States. Did you find what you were looking for?
I did. I totally did. Yeah. I got to learn with the best musicians around when I went to Berkeley and NEC for my undergrad and grad school. And I met some of the best jazz players around, that are just like playing everywhere now. So now we're peers and we play around New York and Boston, and some people live in LA or here and there, but we meet up and play or tour. Yeah, I definitely found exactly what I was looking for, the community, the people who know all about this music, and that's their life, And then I found out other things that, just like about living as a musician here. There's so many opportunities and so many other worlds to explore other than just, the traditional jazz. There's just like all kinds of music happening, and it's all super interesting, all just like waiting for me to find it.
So why do you love jazz?
I think that the main thing that I love about it is it's this common language between people. Some people look at jazz as one thing or another, like only this kind of traditional playing or something else. But it's a common language that you don't need to know a person. You don't need to even know the tune necessarily. You just need to open your ears and listen to each other, and things just happen, and you make just magic happen. I love the improvisation part of it. I love that it changes all the time. Nothing is ever the same. If you perform a song twice, even in the same evening, it's never going to be the same. And I get bored really easily. Yeah, and it requires a lot of skill, so I feel like that's a big part of it. I want to feel like everyone around me is serious about what they do.
So everyone has their interpretation of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you know who you are best. Who do you think you are?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, I don't know if any one thing can define you, some people think it's where you went to school or who your family is or where you grew up. I think it's just a combination of all the experience I had my whole life. So I don't know if I can really answer that. I'm just, a grain of sand in the world.
Right on. I agree. No, that's great. That's a great way. No, that's totally, I always love these answers to these big questions. And hey, man, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz to talk about your album and your life and music. I'm looking forward to spinning it on the show.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Israel, Boston, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Dor for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.